Hey everybody, this is Jeremy Siskind. I am the author of this fabulous, life-changing book. I have a copy right here. I can send you this very copy if you order it from my website today. But the reason why I'm here is not shameless self-promotion. It's to talk about altered dominant chords. And altered dominant chords are one of the reasons that people love jazz harmony, whether you know it or not. Altered dominants are a key to why jazz sounds colorful. So I'm going to play a little bit. Here you see the first three measures of body and soul, and I'm going to use some altered dominants in here. And how often and what sorts of altered dominants a pianist uses is going to go a long way towards defining their style. And the first thing that I want to do is to clear up this misconception that I find a lot of my students have, which is that they need to basically be reading exactly the chord symbols that are on the page. And that's not really true. Chord symbols are there to give you information. They're not an instructional guide. And this is incredibly important when it comes to altered dominants, because one of the things that you're allowed, and I would say expected to do as a high-level amateur or professional level jazz pianist, is to freely alter dominant chords. So if you look at this first line here, you'll see we have three dominant chords, a B flat 7 in measure 1, an A flat 7 in measure 2, and a G flat 7 in measure 3, and none of them are indicated to be altered, right? None of them say flat 9 or sharp 5 or anything like that. But as a pianist, or really as any instrumentalist, you don't need to wait for yourself to be told to be altered. We always add color. So even though these don't say to do anything, I'm adding a flat 9 to the B flat 7, and then a flat 5 to the A flat 7. Sorry, a sharp 5, my bad. And then I'm gonna add a flat 9, and what else did I add? Here's a flat 5 to the G flat 7. So you don't need to wait for an invitation in order to add alterations. Okay, so let's talk about what our alterations are that we add to dominant chords, and we'll get a little bit into it. Okay, so I'm going to show you this how I teach it. And whenever we're teaching and learning something, we don't do it in the most precise way the first time with all the nuances. So I'm going to kind of show you the simplest way to think about it, and as we go, we're going to get a little bit more complex. So when you have a chord like this B flat 7, first thing we need to do to figure out if we're going to be able to use an altered dominant is to make sure that it's a dominant chord. We can't just go and do this to any kind of a chord, not major, not minor. This is only for dominant chords, okay? Second thing is that we're going to raise or lower the 9th or the 5th. We can't change the 3rd and the 7th. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because if we change the 3rd and the 7th, what we're really changing is the kind of chord that we have. Right? If we were going to start with a dominant 7th and then raise the 7th, all of a sudden we'd have a major 7th chord, right? Or if we were going to lower the 3rd, we'd have a minor 7th chord. So if we change the 3rd and the 7th, we're changing the very identity of the chord. So we want to change the 5th and the 9th, our color tones. And we can either raise or lower those notes by a half step. And so I want to walk you through each of these altered tones. So I chose B flat 7 because that's that second chord in body and soul. There's your B flat 7. Okay. I think the most common alteration that we see in jazz is the flat 9. And the flat 9 sounds like this. Some of you might hear kind of a diminished 7th sound in there, because if we separate out the root from the rest of the chord, these four notes, the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, and the 9th, form a diminished 7th chord. So it does have a diminished sound to it. Now, I can give you two reasons why I think the flat 9 is the most common alteration. One is that it creates this beautiful descending chromatic line in a 2-5-1. So if we're going to do a 2-5-1, F minor, B flat 7, E flat major, listen to the top line. Just lovely, right? This is the sort of thing that we love to hear. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that this chord is incredibly common in minor keys because that flat ninth belongs to the harmonic minor scale. So if we're in E flat minor, like we are when we start Body and Soul, debatably, we very naturally want to have that flat nine in the dominant chord in a minor key. Okay, so you're going to see a ton of flat nines. The sharp nine, now we're on to this measure. It's a very pungent, noticeable sound to me. And so this has, the sharp nine is a C sharp. And really the defining thing of this chord is that you have this major seventh between the third and the sharp nine. Now some of you might have been fooled before with the sharp nine because it's enharmonically the same note as the minor third. And so sometimes I see students misidentifying chords because they see that minor third and they think that it must be a minor chord. But you can recognize that it's a dominant with a sharp nine by the fact that the major third is also present. The major third really can't be anything else other than the major third. So if you have a major and a minor third together, my guess is that you have a dominant seventh with a sharp nine. And so it's a very strident, I say the word pungent, sound. And sometimes we even, when we play this, will resolve sharp nine to flat nine, and then usually the 5 of the 1 chord. One place that you see these sharp 9 chords used a ton is in funk music. For example, if we're playing a James Brown cover, I'll use a voicing that has the 3rd, the 7th, and the sharp 9. Sharp 9, which, as we said, is enharmonically the same as the minor third. So just like the blues has this mixture of major and minor third, this dominant 7th sharp 9 chord also has a mixture of major and minor third. So we use it a lot in blues, funk, R&B music. Moving on to these 2 sharp 5 chords that are in these last 2 measures here. These both have a whole tone flavor. So here's B flat 7 with a sharp 5. And that would resolve here. Just like the flat 9, this sharp 5 creates a beautiful descending chromatic line in our voice. I love the sound of the B flat 7 flat 5. You know, we have this really dissonant note that's a tritone above the root, but it's so colorful, so beautiful. See, I've written down below that the dominant 7th chord with a sharp 5 is also known as as a dominant chord with a flat 13, and that the dominant 7th chord with a flat 5 is also known as the sharp 11th. And they're not exactly the same. I'm going to get into this a little bit later. But for me, the shortest, most direct path to understanding your options for altered dominant chords is to understand that you are basically moving the 5th or the 9th in either direction. And we're going to get into nuances a little bit later. So now I said that you have blank slate and you're even expected to add these alterations to dominant chords no matter what. But there is one caveat, which is that you need to check the melody because you don't want to decide to use an alteration that's going to immediately create a clash with the melody. So if we go back to this melody to Body and Soul, I could certainly make this a B flat 7. Oops, I meant to write flat 9. So in that case, I'm using a C flat or a B natural. It's in my right hand thumb right here. And it's very lovely. Notice how much nicer that sounds then. It's more colorful. I could, I think, use a B flat 7 sharp 9, although it's going to sound a little strange. Let's try it. That's a big tension for that place in the song. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I would like that sharp 9 to resolve to the flat 9. That's very nice. What I don't think I can do is add a B flat 7 with a sharp 5 or a flat 5. And the reason is this F right here. That's the fifth. And it's coming right with the chord. So if I decide to add a sharp 5, an F sharp, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it might be nicer if we did it. And if I decide to add the flat 5, which would be an F flat or an E natural, we're really going to start to have problems. Let's listen to that. We get that interval there, which is really dissonant. So you can't just go willy-nilly adding in these alterations. You want to check it against the melody. Now, as always, there's a lot of nuance. At a fast tempo, I don't really mind some of these clashes. Watch, I'll play this tune faster, and I'm going to use that flat 5 on the B flat 7, and I don't think it's going to sound that bad. Right? No problem for me, but at that ballad tempo, it does bother me. So it's going to be a little bit different depending on your taste and tempo, as well as, does that note that's going to clash land right on the beat, or is it maybe a shorter note right after the beat? All these things will affect whether or not clashes are going to be a problem with the melody. Okay, now what's really fun about these altered chords is that you don't have to decide just one alteration. All of these alterations actually go really well together. So you can add not just a sharp 5, but you could add a sharp 5 and a sharp 9. And so here's the chord with the sharp 5. I'll add the sharp 9 as well. And now we got this really beautiful chord, right? Super rich, right? I could combine the flat 5 and the sharp 9. I could combine the sharp 5 and the flat 9. The flat 5 and the flat 9. You can create your own combinations here. It's like having a bunch of ingredients in the kitchen and being like, oh, well, these two will make an interesting salad dressing, right? And you can also combine different alterations of the same note. So a flat 9 and a sharp 9 are going to sound nice together. Flat 9, sharp 9. I'll put them a little lower. So if you're wondering what I'm playing the root of the chord, the third, the seventh, and the flat 9, and the sharp 9. The flat 5 and the sharp 5 also go great together. I'm going to spread them out a little bit more. I'll put the sharp 5 here, the flat 5 here. Pretty nice. And this last chord, this is kind of the ultimate altered chord in my opinion, which has the flat 5, the sharp 5, the flat 9, and the sharp 9. So I wrote it out for you. If you're wondering how do we get to 8-note jazz voicings, here's one way. If we spread that out into a nicer voicing, we can get something like that. So that's kind of throwing the entire kitchen sink into your recipe. Now, with that in mind, we do have this chord that you might have seen, which we call an alt chord. And this is kind of a funny chord. It goes with what we sometimes call the altered scale in jazz, which, and I'm sorry if this sounds overly complicated and theoretical, it's the 7th mode of the melodic minor. And what that means is that if you want to find the altered scale, you go up a half step and you use that scale's harmonic minor. So if I want B flat altered, I'm going to take the B. Did I say that right? Yeah. The B, or technically the C flat melodic minor. And we call this the altered scale because look, it has the root, it has the flat 9, that C flat, the sharp 9, the D sharp, and then this is enharmonically the third. It's kind of weird, it's in the 4th scale position, but it's the major third of the key. Then we have the flat 5, which we sometimes call the sharp 11, the sharp 5, which we sometimes call the flat 13, the dominant 7th, and then the root again. So here we have the 3rd and the 7th, and then both of our pairs of alterations, the flat 5, the sharp 5, the flat 5, the sharp 5. And so when you, so this B flat 7 alt chord means that you want to match this scale. So what that means is that you can't play the natural fifth or the natural ninth, because those notes are not in this scale, right? So you have to use some combination of altered notes. And so the way that I wrote it out was with little slashes. And sometimes for my students, I call this a choose your own adventure chord. Because you can choose, do I want to use the flat 5 or do I want to use the sharp 5? Do I want to use the flat 9? Do I want to use the sharp 9? Well, you just can't use the natural 9. So this chord, it's not a specific set of notes. It actually just goes with that scale. So you could put in all of your alterations. You could play that kitchen sink chord if you want, but you don't have to. You don't have to play all the notes of the scale just because it's there. Just like in a major 7th chord, you don't have to play all the notes of a major scale. Now, I promised you a little bit of nuance around this idea of a flat 13 and a sharp 11th, and this section is really only for my most nerdy video watchers. So if you're nerdy and into theory, I want to talk about why you might choose to say that a chord is a B flat 7 sharp 5 instead of a B flat 7 flat 13 or vice versa. And there's a couple reasons. The first one is that sharps go up and flats go down. So if I have a B flat 7 sharp 5 with this F sharp, I would plan for it to resolve upwards. Whereas if I have a B flat 7 flat 13 with this same note, I would plan for it to resolve downwards. Okay, so that's a very simple concept. There's a few other reasons. You might have noticed I resolved this chord to E flat major, the first chord, and then I resolved the second one to E flat minor. And this note, calling this a G flat rather than an F sharp makes a lot more sense if you're in E flat minor, right? G flat is the third of that key. So it'd be really weird to be using an F sharp and then go into E flat minor. I'll give you one more reason that these two chords are different, which is that this first chord has an altered fifth. It has F sharp as the fifth. The second chord actually has an F natural as the fifth. It just now has a G flat up above. So we're probably going to choose different scales for these two chords based on the fact that one has an F natural and the other does not. There's not necessarily a single scale that I would choose with either of these chords, but one possibility is that you could use the whole tone scale with this first chord. Whereas you're probably going to want to use some kind of an E flat minor scale for the second chord, maybe E flat harmonic minor. Depending on the ninth, it could also be E flat melodic minor. So even though they're just like doing a little bit of enharmonic differentiation, this has some serious implications. You might choose some different scales based on how you name the chords. I tried to get it to show that I wrote E flat melodic minor here as well. Hopefully now you can see it. On the other side, think similar things. This first chord has an F flat, which probably in F flat is going to resolve down to an E flat. Whereas this chord has an E natural, which is going to resolve up probably to an F. Again, we're thinking different scales. This could be a whole tone, whereas this scale is highly associated with the Lydian dominant scale. This is a scale that has a flat 7 and a sharp 4. And again, that's accommodating the fact that we have an F natural. Great, I think that's all that I wanted to show you today. So just to review here, first of all, don't wait to be invited to use altered tones. You can come up with your own altered tones. Whenever you see a dominant chord, you're welcome to use altered tones, with the one caveat that you want to check it against the melody, particularly at a ballad tempo. Then remember that the 4 kinds of altered tones that you can use are raising and lowering the 9th and the 5th of the chord. And you might see them called a flat 13th or a sharp 11th. And those are different, but to get started out, I think it's plenty fine to think about a sharp 5 and a flat 5. Then remember that altertones can be combined. You don't have to just pick one. You can pick 2, 3, or even 4 altertones. And then we have this chord called the alt chord, which is kind of a choose your own adventure chord. It goes with this scale. And when you see this chord, what you need to know is to not use a natural 5th or 9th, to use a flat or a sharp 5th or 9th. With that in mind, just want to encourage you one more time to check out my beautiful book, Playing Solo Jazz Piano. I got to get rid of this copy. And please like and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you all. I'll see you soon.